What is up, you thick, rear-end loving people? If you clicked on this video, more than likely you have an interest in the M109R, because today I'm going to be figuring out why my M109R still runs like crap. So previously, last year, I did a lot of work on my M109R. I did valve clearance checks. I changed out the clutches. I changed out spark plugs. I cleaned out the air filter system. I did a lot of work on this bike. And what the symptoms I'm having right now is essentially when I'm riding down the highway and I basically gun on the throttle, the bike feels like it's hesitating or it's stuttering. The revs go up, but the bike feels like it's not putting down the power. So the first time I experienced this was when I was riding with my friends on their NEN Challengers. We basically just did some pulls on the highway and essentially they pulled away from me like the bike was sitting still. So fast forward to now, again, I've done valve clearance checks. Basically the valve clearances are still within spec, but they are at the bottom end of the spec, meaning the next time I check the clearances, I think in the next 10,000 miles, the cams are gonna have to come out of the bike. The cams did have a few score marks on them from, I guess, lack of lubrication over time. The bike has about 43,000 miles on it, but it's nothing to, completely be concerned about. I also want to mention I completely changed out the braking system. I changed, rebuilt the brake calipers, pulled out the pistons, changed the seals, changed the brake lines to steel braided in the rear and in the front. And like I said, I spent 450 to 500 bucks changing out the clutch plates, because when that issue happened with the Challenger, I initially thought it was the clutch plates. So I spent that money, changed it out, and later on down the road, it's still doing the same thing. So it's not to say that the clutch plates didn't need to be changed out, but more than likely I could have gone further with those clutch plates. But that was what I did because I thought that's what the problem was. But now I'm thinking that the issue now, the real issue is actually the fuel system. So you got the fuel pressure regulator, you got the check valve, you got the fuel pump, you got the fuel filter, you got a lot of different things that are at play with the fuel system. And of course the fuel injectors, the fuel rail. So when you're having like hesitation, what actually happens with the motor? You got three things that really contribute to a motor working. You got air, you got spark, and you got fuel. Well, I'm pretty sure the spark and the air portions of this are perfectly fine. And I know there's a lot of different things that go into this, like throttle bodies, the fuel system, the air, the spark, are they gapped correctly? Is there like a compression leak? There's a bunch of different stuff, but at the engine's core, you got spark, fuel, and air. And I do think the fuel system is the problem. So over time, I've been trying to figure out exactly what this problem is that the M109R is experiencing. What is the root cause of this? And I started to dig into the fuel system late last year. And basically I noticed that my fuel filter was completely black. This is my fuel filter. And if you know anything about fuel filters, they're basically clear. They're not supposed to look like this. So all this black residue has built up in my fuel filter over time. Now this is a 2007 Suzuki M109R, and essentially it is completely stock. I haven't done anything to the fuel system on the bike. So this is the original fuel filter for the bike. Now, again, I'm gonna do a fuel pump test today to find out, am I losing fuel pressure when I'm asking for more fuel, meaning I'm throttling down? And also, am I actually maintaining the proper fuel pressure with just the bike starting up? Because I don't have any issues with the bike starting up, but the question is, am I getting that 43 PSI of fuel pressure that I'm supposed to be getting from the stock fuel pump? Now, the last time I took off the fuel pump of this bike, it looked perfectly fine. For the fuel pump to be from 2006, when the bike was put together, and the bike was manufactured in 2007, that's the year model. The fuel pump still looks fine. I looked inside of it. As far as the tank goes, there's no rust. The fuel pump, the whole fuel pump assembly looks better than a lot of fuel pump assemblies that I've seen. There's no rust on it. There's no indications of that. So what I think happens is that something has broken down over time, because normally these things are like brown, but it's black on the inside. So something is getting in there from, I think, components. And today I'm gonna just do a simple test. So what I'm gonna do now is just simply take the side panels off, take the tank off, and then we're gonna get access to the under the tank for the fuel pump, and we're gonna connect a fuel pressure tester, and we're just gonna determine are we getting adequate pressure. So yeah, let's get started. Now before I start, I do wanna prove to you guys that the 109 does run. Actually, last year I changed out that fuel filter. There's a new one on the bike now, and I rode the bike to Tennessee. It still had its weird issues, but yeah, the bike does run. But let me show you that it actually does start. That is the fuel pump priming, so we know it primes. So the 109 does start. You heard it prime. Yeah. So yeah, it can be ridden the way it is. All right, for starters, we gotta take this seat off. Pop that. Lift up. There's the seat. That Allen key right there, and we got Allen key right there. Very simple. Like I said, you pop that out. Right there. You don't want to pull, you got to go forward with it. The reason being, you got those little tabs. You don't want to tear those tabs off, so you just pop it out, go forward, pull. Same thing. Pop out. Pop out. You go forward with it. The difference on this side, you do have the little cable right there, kind of like a. You got the little cable that you have to take off. That pops the seat up. So we're gonna take that off right quick. And the way you do this, simply pop this up and rotate this cable around. And that's done. So now the tank is free to move. Got a speedometer right here. This basically got a simple tab you pull and it pulls it out, so easy peasy. Yeah. Really easy. All right, to access the fuel pump with it still connected and everything and have enough clearance, I needed to jack the tank up, or at least raise the tank up. So what I used one of these magnetic tool grabbers. It has a magnetic end and it's sticking to the chassis of the bike, and it's under there basically holding this up. So you shake it. You have to really shake this thing to get it to move, but long story short, it keeps it right where I need to, just so I can get access to everything I need. As you can see right here, this is the electrical connector for the fuel pump right here. So you disconnect that, there's no electricity to the fuel pump. And also this is the fuel pump line. This is where the fuel comes out, and then it goes down here to the fuel rail right here. So now that we have everything raised, we can start disconnecting stuff and putting the fuel pressure tester in place. Also, keep in mind that when you're testing fuel systems, it makes for a good idea to have something like a fire extinguisher around. I picked some of these up from Harbor Freight, just in case things go a little sideways, but I have an affiliate link for the same exact one I think out on Amazon. So if you want to pick one or two up for yourself, definitely do that. It doesn't hurt to have a fire extinguisher around. So, all right, so it's later in the day now. The fuel pressure gauge I'm going to be using is the one from Harbor Freight. I've already put some Teflon tape on it, so once the fuel actually gets in there, it won't leak. I've heard about this thing leaking, but it was only like 15 bucks. The problem is that the attachments in that kit won't work on this bike, or at least it's more difficult. So I went and picked up some hose clamps, 3 bucks from AutoZone, and I also picked up some fuel line from AutoZone. I think it's 15 bucks for this is 1/4 of an inch. And it will actually fit on the stock, the fuel rail and on the fuel pump on the 109. Now the reason I did this is because if you buy the kit from Suzuki or use the kit that the techs use, it's like 500 bucks, and it has the exact fittings that come off of the fuel rail and the fuel pump, and you just plug straight into it. But the problem is it's 500 bucks, and I don't want to spend 500 bucks on just this test. So, all right, first thing I got to do is take this fuel line off from the fuel pump. And you got 2 little tabs here on both sides, and you basically put this rag on here. You squeeze and you simply pull. Sometimes if you had like a flat head, you could decompress those little tabs. Sometimes they're a little hard to get. Squeeze and you just pull. Yep, there it is. Like I said, you squeeze it, and once you pull. All right, that's fuel line. All right, so I got the tank cocked on the side. Sketch as hell. And the reason being is because we got the fuel pump, and that line runs right under there, and now we gotta pry it out of here. The same exact thing. It's got those two prongs on the side, and just gotta pop it off. There it is. That's all I needed. It's good now. So I'll pull it off. That's it. So like I said, these little tabs on the side, you just gotta get something to push them in, and then pull one side and push the other side in, and it should slide off. So that's dripping fuel. We got fuel pump line coming to the gauge. There's the gauge, and this line is going to the fuel rail. Very simple. Now I'm hoping that when I turn this on, fuel doesn't just go everywhere. I'm actually gonna lift the tank up and make sure that there's no fuel leaking when I turn this on. But if this is operating correctly, at least from a standstill, we should see 43 PSI. And hopefully we get that, so let's see. All right, I sprung a leak. Not at the, not here, but I sprung one right here. Ugh. All right, I took some channel locks. Man, this thing's still dripping, man. It's not gonna give me a good read. All right, so I'm still getting a drip here because this thing's cheap as hell. Let's try it again. All right, I'm definitely getting that. I'm definitely getting 43. And like I said, oh God, that thing's just leaking, man. All right, so I'm gonna actually start the bike and see what happens. Alright, so I'm puzzled a little bit. So I did my test, and got this thing. Let me go ahead and get this thing off because it's leaking like a train right now. God. Hey, it worked, but it's definitely very cheap. I really was expecting the fuel pressure to drop as I gunned the bike, but clearly it was holding that 43 PSI the entire time. So that fuel pump is strong. So I'm still trying to understand, like when I'm cruising on the highway and I just gun it, it's like it's hesitating. So I don't know if that's the valves. I don't know if that maybe it's the fuel pressure regulator. I don't know. All I know is clearly, even though this damn thing was leaking the whole time, it was holding constant pressure. I don't know which one of these I should take off first, but I'm gonna take them off and put everything back where it needs to be. All right, I'm gonna re-hook up this fuel line right here to the it's back on. I'm not gonna connect the one to the tank because I'm gonna go ahead and take off the tank, and I'm gonna show you guys what I'm talking about. Lay this back down where it needs to be. Forward, jack this up. Put my magnets back under here. It's done. Now I'm gonna get a box. Damn it. That might have scratched the tank. And lift this up, take the fire shield off. Or heat shield, rather. Got a few screws right here that we have to take off in a star pattern so we don't basically warp the seal that's on there. So I'm a bit perplexed, man, because I don't really know what the problem is at this point. If I remember correctly, I think I had to lift. There we go. There's a lot of fuel still in here, so I gotta be careful. There we go. So we're looking in the bottom of the fuel tank, and I don't want to move it too much because I didn't drain it. I can tell you guys, I don't see anything that's just standing out to me that, like, normally if something's in here, you'd see it floating. That's me not sloshing it around. But here's what's interesting. This fuel filter is not old. Look how dirty it is already. This is a brand new filter. I put this on back in November, and it is already discolored. That's not good. I don't know, man. I'm kind of perplexed at this point. I'm gonna put it all back together, but clearly I gotta get another fuel filter, and I'm wondering if I should just go ahead and take this pump apart. Maybe I'll save that for tomorrow, but I'm a little perplexed. Let me know what y'all think about that. This is like I said, this is a fairly new fuel filter. This should not happen within a few months if there was no problem. And looking at inside of there, I can't tell if anything's in there, but something might be here at the bottom, and when I run the tank load, it's sucking it up. That's not can't rule that out. I've seen that happen, but I'm just wondering if this tank is clogged, and when it dumps it back, it gets caught in that filter. So I don't know. I'm gonna sleep on it, but that's all I got for y'all. Clearly, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm learning as I go, but I can say that that cheap fuel pressure test did let me know that I'm getting the correct fuel pressure. I'm getting the correct fuel pressure when I rev the bike up. But somewhere down the line, I'm losing fuel pressure or power when I'm trying to just gun on it. And looking back at that fuel filter, it's clear that this thing's gummed up again. So yeah, let me know what y'all think down below. As always, thanks for listening to my story and learning. I'm learning as I go, and I'm showing you guys that you can do this stuff yourself. But yeah, as always, if you're subscribed, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.